Welcome to the 2025 NFL Mock Draft 2.0 on YouTube and Twitter as well. I'll leave a link down below for 1.0 that I made a few days ago, so you can go check that out and what my results were for that. I also posted my updated for this one on Twitter 7.0. This would be on my Twitter page, pinned all the way at the top of my profile, so you can go check that out for the full list if you want to skip this as well. But getting into it, starting off with the Tennessee Titans. Early on, these are going to be relatively the same. The first three I had from last time. Or sorry, one difference would be with a team will be coming up pretty soon. But for the Tennessee Titans, first overall, Cam Ward. It's pretty self-explanatory. He's the lock, regardless if you feel Shedeur Sanders is better than him, or how you feel about Cam Ward as a prospect in general. It seems like he's a lock to be the first overall pick. I think it's been like that for a while now since the combine. Pretty self-explanatory. The next one for the Cleveland Browns, I'm going to stick with what I had last time. I have Travis Hunter. To me, just again, very versatile, and he fits more needs as opposed to Abdul Carter. It's more of a nice thing to think about, a nice dream scenario, I should say, with him and alongside Myles Garrett. But Travis Hunter just fills more needs. They need help at the wide receiver position, depending on how many snaps he's going to play at wide receiver, as opposed to corner with the concerns with Denzel Ward and his injury history. If not, you have a great cornerback duo in that side of it. So I have Travis Hunter going to Cleveland second overall. For the New York Giants, I'm pretty sure I would change for this one because I had Shedeur going last time. I have Abdul Carter. And Giants are always going to be a wild card up until basically the day of the draft of how it's going to happen. Until they get to their selection, I truly don't know what they're going to do. There's parts of me that think that they are going to go with Shedeur Sanders. There's other parts of me that think they're going to go somewhere else. It really depends on what Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen think about their future. I mean, I would assume that they would think that this is it, even though they probably should have gotten fired this past year for 2024. So if you're looking at instant impact players right now who's going to help you win, Abdul Carter is more of that than Shedeur Sanders. You already look at the quarterbacks they have with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Say what you want about them. Definitely not the best options out there. So Shedeur Sanders can certainly be an opportunity here, but I think they are in a win-now mentality. They have to do it now to keep their jobs. Abdul Carter can certainly bring it to the table. The best defensive lineman, best edge rusher, and arguably to some people the best player in the entire draft, going third overall. It may be a little bit redundant because you have Burns and Thibodeaux, but I think this will kind of push out Thibodeaux out the back door there and trade him elsewhere, and have Abdul Carter and Burns be your top two pass rushers there. So I look at that, and it's one of those situations at this point where it's too tough to pass up on Abdul Carter at this spot. If you do, it better be for Shedeur Sanders. If not, that's already a fireable offense with that. So I had the Giants taking Abdul Carter third overall. Next for the New England Patriots, I have Will Campbell going there. It's makes perfect sense for them. You have your franchise quarterback, get your franchise tackle, and I do believe Will Campbell is the best offensive lineman in the NFL, in the NFL draft, I should say. Some people do have him mocked ahead of him or being the first tackle off the board. I don't see that. I think no doubt Will Campbell throughout the whole process has been the best by far. And again, you get your franchise tackle, pair up with your franchise quarterback. Great situation of what Vrabel and that team is doing for Drake May. Also bring in a player like Stephon Diggs. Again, say what you may about the contract and if it was worth it or not, but just showing the initiative of adding pieces around them. And I think Will Campbell will go a long ways away helping Drake May in his future. So number 5, the whole time I've had Mason Graham going here. Whole time. This is, to me, I think the first time I've ever had someone not Mason Graham going 5th overall to Jacksonville. And I have Tyler Warren. I look at this as a situation with, of course, looking at your Evan Ingram replacement, but also just adding more pieces to that offense. And it's certainly debatable of who the best offensive player on the board is between him and, if you want to say, Ashton Jennings, with their situation at running back as well, because with Gibbsby and Etienne, it's a little bit up in the air. Gibbsby kind of took over Etienne's role, at least majority of the time, as towards the end of the season. But I look at Tyler Warren and what he can do there. They need offensive help still. They got rid of Christian Kirk. You brought in a great piece, a huge steal in Brian Thomas Jr. Gabe Davis has been disappointing. I mean, as a Bills fan, it's not surprising at all because this is who he was in Buffalo, and he got overpaid, no question, overpaid there. Didn't live up to the expectations, got hurt, unfortunately. But I look at that, and they have to add pieces for Trevor Lawrence if they want himself and also this team to really take a next step forward and getting back to what it was in the second half of 2022 for that one. And Tyler One certainly brings that with his size, not necessarily your typical traditional tight end, but more of a Travis Kelce for the receiving tight end aspect of it. And to me, I think they'll go a long ways away with helping Trevor Lawrence and this offense really, again, surrounding him with much talent as possible, what he can do for them. Again, I've seen some people say Ashton Jenney, which I wouldn't entirely rule out. I think that'd be a little bit too high for him at this spot here. I think Tyler Warren would be a better long-term option than Ashton Jenney. If you depending on how you view running backs and their long-term futures in the NFL. Another one too I've seen is Mumbo as well at 5th overall. Certainly a possibility as well. Offensive line isn't the best, but it's solid. But I don't think it's anything crazy to really write home about. But for me, I think Tyler Warren would be a good selection, 5th overall. Again, adding more pieces. He did a great job with Brian Thomas Jr. Keep going with that. So next with the Las Vegas Raiders. Speaking of Ashton Jenney, I am going there. The last 3 mock drafts have had him going to the Raiders. It just makes sense. I mean, that is a big spot that needs to be filled in the offensive spot. They had one of, if not the worst, running back groups alongside, people say Dallas, even though they had a 1,000-yard rusher. But Dallas and Denver, is teams I would look at as pretty horrible running back situations they had there. Ashton Jenney certainly is, immediately upgrades that and gets you in one of the better spots in the NFL. If he can replicate in what you believe he can do at the NFL level. You already have Brock Bowers, who had a historic rookie season. You bring in Geno Smith, who brings respect and stability at that quarterback position. Keep adding pieces like that. I mean, McMillan, early on in the mock draft process, I think I did have him going 6th overall. To me, I just look at it as it's a more of a need for, at least for Ashton Jenney. It goes back to what I said for Tyler Warren, of the best offensive players available. I would lean towards Ashton Jenney at the spot here. With the 6th overall pick for the Raiders. And again, Pete Carroll love running the football. Makes perfect sense for that. So next for the New York Jets, I have Mason Graham falling all the way to 7th overall. 2 spots lower than where I traditionally have him going. It'd be just a great pairing with Quinn Williams. I think there's a spot where, yes, you can go offensive line. You could maybe go elsewhere with the selection if Shedeur Sanders was available, or with Shedeur Sanders still being available at the spot here. They seem pretty committed to Justin Fields and him being the I won't say franchise quarterback, but the quarterback one going forward. So I'd look at that, and it just for Mason Graham being on the board, if you don't care about Shedeur Sanders, it's tough to pass up on a prospect like that falling to you to 7th overall. The best interior defensive lineman and second best defensive lineman in the draft. So again, I look at that as it's too tough to pass up at the spot for 7th overall. Makes perfect sense for the Jets, bolstering that defensive line even more and make it even forced to compete with the AFC East, which the Buffalo Bills are still at the top there. Miami Dolphins, who are a little bit shaky now at offensive line, so you can take full advantage of that as well. And you look at the New England Patriots, who are still rebuilding, no doubt. I think they'll have a much better season in 2025 than they did this past year, but still going after Drake May with that. Again, a little bit of a shaky offensive line, even with Will Campbell being taken 4th overall with that one. So next we have the Carolina Panthers, and for this one too, I do have Jalen Walker I'm pretty sure I had him last time going as well. Versatile linebacker, edge rusher, whatever you need. They just need something on the defensive side. With Brian Burns being gone, they were horrible at getting to the quarterback, especially the sacks as well. So Jalen Walker is definitely one of the best pass rushers in this draft, depending on how you look at him, linebacker, edge rusher, how you want to pin him as. They just need all the help they can get, and certainly, again, versatile and what he can do. And they need to really get to the quarterback. That's something they really struggled with last year. Something that kind of got him in trouble with some of the losses of not just being able to get to to the quarterback as well. So great selection here, I think, for Carolina. Again, versatile, what he can do for you. Hopefully, he could be your next Brian Burns with that pick. But again, just anything on the defensive line or defensive general is needed. McMillan could certainly be a possibility here to help Bryce Young in his pivotal 3rd year of his his NFL career. But for Jalen Walker, I'm going 8th overall to Carolina. So next for the New Orleans Saints, this is where I do have Shedeur Sanders finally going 9th overall. I love the pairing between him and Kellen Moore and what Moore has been able to do everywhere he's gone with Dallas, Chargers, and the Philadelphia Eagles, especially with the quarterbacks. and this would be a great pairing, great situation all around. He's in a dome. If you care about the arm strength and the worries about that, so he's in a great situation there. But at least for the offensive mindset, I like what Kellen Moore brings to the table with Shedeur Sanders there. You look at for Sanders, great mindset, great mentality, as well as an accurate and takes care of the football. It's a great pairing all around, and maybe gets your next. Darius, I want to go as far as to say, but at least for the makeup of it, kind of the next like Drew Brees for you guys there. For the pieces on paper, I do like what they have with Chris Olave, Rashid. You look at Alvin Kamara in the backfield with Miller backing him up, as well as Josh Johnson, solid tight end. Nothing crazy to talk about, but okay pieces to start off with, and afterwards you can move forward with that, and hopefully for years to come and trying to fix that cap situation, bring in more pieces for Shedeur Sanders. Also, too, with the situation with Derek Carr with his injury and also his cap situation, we'll see how that plays out. But I think regardless of how, regardless if Shedeur, or if Derek Carr can play this year or not, you have to look for the long term option. I wasn't a big fan of Derek Carr signing a couple of years ago. Didn't really care for it. I think he's an okay quarterback at best, a solid starter. Definitely didn't have a great success with Oakland when he was there, but not really not entirely his fault for most of the time there. Definitely a dysfunctional franchise, as looking at where they're drafting up in the first round. But I like a situation with Shedeur Sanders. Personally for Shedeur Sanders, for his sake, a much better spot in my opinion than the New York Giants. Just a lot more dysfunctional there, uncertainty with the head coach and the offensive pieces. So again, great selection for the New Orleans Saints, 9th overall. So next for the Chicago Bears, I do have a corner off the board. Second one, Jahad Barron. I look at this as a great pairing with Jalen Johnson, and for what Jahad Barron can do, very versatile. He can move up in the slot, can be outside boundary corner. You look at the snaps by alignment, great in the box as well. Great player all around, and has really jumped up on the leaderboards or the draft board with the rankings early on in the process. Will Johnson was ahead of him, and I had him early on ahead of him, but quickly Barron really took over with that. You look at the comparables as well, phenomenal all across the board, especially his zone coverage, 91.5, coverage grade 91.1, run defense 83.4, man coverage is the weakest with 69 even. And you look at the advanced stats as well, and if you care about the grades by game too. So next for the San Francisco 49ers, a weird spot, typically always drafting in the late 20s or 30s spot. I look at the other corner off the board here. I have Will Johnson. Not versatile as Jahad Barron, more of your outside boundary corner, but this is something I think they need in the secondary. They lost one of their corners into free agency, and I think overall in general, they need a revamp with that. They bring back Robert Saleh, who did a fantastic job there when he was defensive coordinator before taking the Jets job. And it's Will Johnson falls a little bit in this draft because of the injury, only playing 6 games this year, as well as you look at if you care about again for the games grades by game, not too impressive overall with it. The best game was USC, but that's not really saying too much about the competition. Best team they faced was Texas with 70.2. Again, everything else isn't too crazy. Man coverage grade is severely lacking in that 50.6. The coverage grade 76.7, zone coverage 75. But again, it's a little bit of a shaky season because of the injury. If you're looking at last year or the year before, goes maybe a little bit higher in the draft or replaces or at least switches with Jahad Barron at that spot there with 10th overall. But still a great corner. I hope he'll be healthy once once training camp and everything comes from once practice starts, and I think it'll be an amazing selection for San Francisco, 11th overall. So next for the Dallas Cowboys, I have McMillan finally going to the Cowboys once again. Just a great pairing with CeeDee Lamb. They need that. They need that great wide receiver too there. If Ashley Jennings was available somehow at 12th overall, I would lean towards him at this spot. But for McMillan, what he can bring to the table, some concerns with him. Just people think just in general he's not going to pan out, and that's really the consensus with this draft, this wide receiving draft class, is that there's no true bona fide number 1 wide receiver compared to it was last season. But certainly, if you look at, depending on how you view Travis Hunter, the best wide receiver in this draft class, or at least number 1 wide receiver off the board here. Great size, 6'5", 212, ran a 440, and stats look impressive, no doubt about that. You question the level of talent that he faced in his 2024 season, but again, overall, if he can maximize what he can do, an amazing pairing alongside CeeDee Lamb and for Dak Prescott in the 2025 season. So next we move to the Miami Dolphins. This is pretty evident. I have Amari Mumbo going here. It's your Teron Armstead replacement, and you have to protect Tua. It's pretty simple as that. I mean, any other selection would be a mistake. You have to protect Tua. You have to do whatever it takes to keep him safe. And I know there's some things out of your hands that Tua does. That is unfortunate, but if you can, control what you can control, Amari Mumbo is a great selection, 13th overall. So next for the Indianapolis Colts here, I have maybe a little bit surprise pick here, maybe a little too high, Nick Manuri. For me, very versatile in what he can do with his size. You can line him up at different spots on the defense there. You can play a little bit linebacker where he wants to line up. You look at the box, 414, deep 193, slot 146. You look at that size, 6'3", 227. Really jumped on people's boards, especially at the combine with the measurements and what he was able to do. Not the best prospect, certainly, a little bit, some concerns, a little bit inconsistencies, but overall, again, I think you're looking for your next Kyle Hamilton type of player, and he certainly fits that profile physically, and you hope that he can replicate that as well. And I think that'd be a great selection for the Indianapolis Colts, 14th overall. Edge rushers can certainly be a possibility here, but I just don't see it going back-to-back years with them going in the first round last year. Again, certainly a possibility for but I think with Nick Manuri, what he can offer you, and again, hopefully, if you're hoping to be the next Kyle Hamilton and what he can do, certainly be a great selection, 14th overall. So next for the Atlanta Falcons, I have Jihad Campbell. Their linebacking core for me is pretty weak, and it's pretty self-explanatory with that. If you look at the comparables and the stats, he's gotten better every single year. In 2022 only played 2 games, but from 23 to 24 played much better. You look at the advanced stats as well as where he's lined up. 637 in the box, 212 or 112 on the defensive line, a little bit all over the place. Very few in the slot, corner, deep, and then you look at the advanced stats or the stats by game as well. So for me, I think he's going to go relatively early. Maybe he's falling a little bit farther down the draft board than it was very early on in the process, but still a great selection, 15th overall in the middle of the first round. And I think something that they really need is that linebacking help, and Jihad Campbell can certainly bring that to you with the Atlanta Falcons going. So next, for the 16th overall pick for the Arizona Cardinals, I have Mike Green. My last one, I do think I have him going to 10th overall to Chicago. So a little bit of a slide for not just Mike Green, but any of the edge rushers in general. Some character concerns, no doubt about that, but really measured up well. You look at the stats here, 17 sacks, 10 hits, 32 hurries, 1 batted pass. Had a great grade on top of what he had in 2023, which a 90.4 is already tough to top. On top of that, get to 92.4 with that as well. And again, the sacks jumped up a good amount, hits jumped up a good amount, hurries was a good amount as well. Not very versatile. What we saw about the last few players, majority of the snaps are outside the box or outside the tackle. With that one, size 6'4", 248, and again, a great selection here for the Arizona Cardinals, and getting your next pass rusher to try and replace J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones. They've had been gone for the last few years now. So next for the Cincinnati Bengals, I have another edge rusher off the board here, controversial as well. I have Shamar Stewart. Great run defender, not that great of a pass rusher. You definitely see that with the comparables with that one. You look at the sacks, that's something that really jumps out at you for his size as well, 6'6", 290, but the combine, I think he was in the 260 range when he measured up with that. That's a little concerning. Again, has the physical tools, and he's another one that really jumped out off the board like Nick Manuri. Great physical tools, measurements. He jumped up on people's, higher up on in the first round. I think at the earliest I've seen him gone in mock drafts is the Carolina Panthers, which is way too high, in my opinion, way, way too high. But for this one, if you can really maximize his potential and what he can do and help with that pass rush ability, no doubt it's a phenomenal, home run hit here for the 17th overall pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think any defensive lineman would really help with this spot. You look at Hendrickson, his uncertainty with his future, with his contract, as well as just helping on the defensive line. They don't really have anyone else outside of Hendrickson, nor do they really have too much outside of the defensive line in general for that defense. But Shamar Stewart, it's definitely a high risk, but also a very high reward if you can mold him and pan him out to be what you hope he can be. Again, already great run defender. It's just the pass rushing ability is above average. Got to bolster that up a little bit, and I think you have a great selection there. So next for the Seattle Seahawks, I have another edge rusher here, kind of a small run going on edge rushers here. I have Mikael Williams. Similar, similar situation in my opinion with Shamar Stewart. A little bit better of a pass rusher, but still needs to be a little bit better with that as well. Great size, 6'5", 265. Still relatively, the youngest player out of the top edge rushers if you're looking at it. So a lot, still a lot room to grow as a player. Certainly, again, has been a little bit more consistent than Shamar Stewart with 5 to 6 sacks per season, and that one. But again, the pass rush ability has to be has to be improved, no doubt about that. Above average in that one. The true pass set grade is below average at 61 even. You look at the run stop ability is good. It's good. The pass rushing not too great, but a little bit above average for that one. Run defense is solid. You look at the advanced stats for that one. Nothing that really to jumps off at you. 3 great games really. One amazing one with against Mississippi State. Outside of that, Tennessee, Massachusetts. Everything else is okay. That's why I'm slipping a little bit towards the middle round. But I think it's again a similar situation like Shamar Stewart. It's his physical tools and his size that gets him drafted maybe higher than he should be. So next for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have Malachi Starks, and for me, I view him as his number one safety, but I do see him falling because again other priorities, other people taking a chance on other players, as well as again look at Nick Manuri for what he can offer you, a little bit more and higher upside than what Malachi Starks is. But that's no disrespect to Malachi Starks and what he's able to do here. The safety position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, can be better, no doubt. And great size, still 6'1", 205, and played relatively well here. No doubt about that. Even like had a good college game or playoff game against Notre Dame in terms of his grade. And again, you look at the stats here, a little bit versatile too as well. Slot could be a slot corner as well if you need him to, but box slot, deep as well for most of the time. Corner, very few snaps on that in the defensive line. So versatile in his own way, but not as much as the physical size for Nick Manuri. So next for the 20th overall pick for the Denver Broncos, I have Amon Hampton here. Marion Hampton going 20th overall here. It's what I talked about early on for the Las Vegas Raiders. They were up there as one of the worst in the NFL. There was definitely a good amount of times where Bo Nix was your leading rusher, and you can't have that long term. I'm sorry. Maybe that did work out in his rookie year, got by with it. You have to upgrade that immensely. And Marion Hampton is a huge upgrade compared to what they have there. They lost Javonte Williams to Dallas as well, no doubt about that too, and put up great stats. And some people view him as far as to say that they think he's better than Ash Jenny as a player and as a prospect here. Brings great size, 6'1", 220, like I talked about. And look at the stats over 1,600 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns. You look at the comparables, great as well. And then for the advanced stats too, not too bad on that one. And overall grade pretty well in this past season. Though you can question the level of talent of what they faced on this season in 2024, but still a great selection, 20th overall, in a spot that they really need to help out for Bo Nix. Wide receiver can certainly be a spot here, but I think Amon Hampton is a little tough to pass upon 20th overall. So next for the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe a selection I don't see too much of, at least in the mock draft I see. I have edge rusher. I have James Pierce Jr. going here. Maybe a little bit smaller in terms of weight-wise, but I think they need that edge rushing ability. I think they need pass rushers outside of J.J. Watt. You have Hayward, who is getting up there in age. He's still good, but up there in age. And you look at for your next edge rusher on that one. You look at the people they've lost in years past due to retirement or moved on. They need to really replenish at that side of the ball, and he can certainly offer that to you. A down season compared to 2023, and if he was able to replicate what he did in 2023, much higher in this draft than where he's going, 21st overall. But again, I think it'd be a great pairing alongside T.J. Watt and really help that side of the ball of having disruptors outside of him. They really have too much for the defensive side. So James Pierce Jr. would be a great selection here. Has to get his way up a little bit more, a little bit thin on that for his frame. But again, overall, it's great selection here for that. So with the Los Angeles Chargers, I have a Michigan player going here for Harbaugh and his connections. I have Kenneth Grant. Run stuffer, great size. Harbaugh knows all about him, 6'3", 339. Gives you some pass rushing ability, but again, just really clogging up the hole, being a nose tackle. I think it'd be a great selection here for that interior defensive line and what Harbaugh and the defense want to do. Edge rushing can certainly be a possibility here because of losing Joey Bosa and not really having too much outside of that. But for me, the interior defensive line would be a huge selection here with Kenneth Grant with the 21st or 22nd overall pick here. Donovan could be a selection here, but I do worry about that his size will be, it's certainly a concern. I think that will drop him in this draft, only being 6'2", 247. And I don't know if he's an every down type of player as opposed to Graham, who was in a much better spot because of his size. So next for the Green Bay Packers, I have a receiver going off the board here for them. I have Matthew Golden. It just is the blazing speed, 4.29. I think it'd be a great pairing, as opposed to what Josh Jacobs said, or agreeing with Josh Jacobs said with Numney and wide receiver 1. I think he can certainly offer that to you. Good size. With 6 foot or 5'11", I see him viewed as, but 6 foot 5'11", 195, great speed, great ability, and what he can do there can stretch the field, no doubt about that. Christian Watson is that player, but unfortunately just inconsistent with injuries with that one. So I look at that and getting more reinforcements for Jordan Love at that selection, 23rd overall. I went back and forth between him and Luther Burden, but for me, again, because of that speed, a little bit faster than Burden, I look at that as a great selection, again, for the Green Bay Packers, and adding more offensive pieces for Jordan Love. So next for the Minnesota Vikings, I have another interior defensive lineman. I have Walter Nolan. I think anywhere on the defensive line is needed. It's losing Hunter was a huge hit for them as well, and from Walter Nolan brings great size in the interior defensive line for Brian Flores' defense. 6'3", 305, has some pass rush ability, 6 to 7 sacks, better than some of the other interior defensive linemen in this draft class as of late for the last 2 years. The run defense is phenomenal. Pass rushing grade is good as well, and a bit versatile where he can line up as well. Next for the Houston Texans, I have Calvin Banks Jr. going here. You look at for Laramie Tunsil and that trade for what they did there, it's immediate replacement. I think even besides that, it's just any offensive line help is needed. C.J. Stroud took a step back in his sophomore year, and it's some of it is on him. Of course, I don't want to say he's blameless in that. Some of it is on him, but I think also it's the play calling, which they got rid of, as well as the offensive line that was very shaky, no doubt about that. Calvin Banks comes in here, can be versatile, tackle, guard, whatever you need him to be. But I think for Laramie, with his departure, he comes in and steps up to be the replacement there. So next for the Los Angeles Rams, I have another interior defensive lineman here, Derek Harmon. More of your pass rusher, or a little bit better pass rushing ability for your interior defensive lineman, similar to maybe Walter Nolan here. The sacks don't jump out you as much compared to Walter Nolan the last 2 years, but certainly can offer that as well. Know about that. A little bit of change of pace compared to Kenneth Grant, who's not that as much, but still great size. 6'5", 310, good to run stuffing ability. It's just a pass rushing grade is a little bit better from that aspect of it, and I don't want to go as far as say Aaron Donald replacement because that's very difficult to do, but I think they want to build a defensive line. I think it'd be a great pairing as well for Verse, the defensive rookie of the year last year. They had great selection, great steal from him from Florida State. Again, I think it'd be a great pairing alongside with them and just trying to bolster that defensive line up as well. It really showed out in terms of the grades, especially against Ohio State. Had 2 great grades in both of them in the Week 7 win, 89.4, as well as the disappointing loss in the Rose Bowl, 86.2. But overall, a little bit, for the grades by game, up and down, no doubt about that. But in terms of best competition, really showed out when he had to. So next for the Baltimore Ravens, for this one, I finally have Donovan going here. Again, I think his size is a concern, and I think this is where he's going to fall in the draft. If he was maybe a few inches taller, he'd be going much higher in that one. I would say relatively in the teens. Maybe you can argue with the 16th overall pick in terms of being the next edge rusher off the board for myself. Again, not questions about every down player is he able to do that, but the stats really back it up there. Huge jump from 23 to 24, especially in the sacks from 2 to 14. You look at the hits from 5 to 20. Hurries relatively the same, 1 less. And again, overall grade was 90 even compared to last year, 78 even, in 2023 I should say. The grades as well, pretty solid as well, and the grades by game, not too bad as well. So next we have the Detroit Lions here. I have another edge rusher off the board here. A little bit more of just a rotational piece for this one. I have Nick Scorin. Try to add someone on the defensive line. Interior defense would certainly be an option, or if any of the 3 guys were still available here. But with that, I think still a solid pick here. Had a little bit of a disappointing sack wise from 23 to 24, from 8 to 4, but still has that possibility to bounce back and has a great frame, 6'4", 285. Still young as they're up there with Mikael Williams. I apologize. I said Mikael Williams was the youngest out of these, the top edge, or most of the top edge rushers on the boards. Nick scoring a tad bit younger, so got a lot of room to grow, similar to what I had for Mikael Williams here. And I think it'd be a good pairing alongside Aiden Hutchinson and getting the help he needs to get pressure on the other side of the offensive line. Six for the Washington Commanders, I have Gray Zabel. You can push him into the guard position for that one, and I think it's just something that they really need for Jayden Daniels. He got sacked a lot. I think he was sacked 47 times, if I have that correctly. Just you gotta protect him. I mean, phenomenal talent, really excelled in his rookie year. Got him all the way to the NFC Championship game. Gotta protect him. You don't want to have him hurt and getting beat up. Gray Zabel will be a great selection here at this one. Another one too, maybe I went back and forth as well with is Tyler Booker at this spot, but for Gray Zabel be at this spot here, I think it's a tough too tough to pass up on for the 29th overall pick. Selection for the Buffalo Bills, I have corner off the board here. I'm going to stick with what I had last time with Trey Amos. It seems like it's a corner that they really are starting to lean into more, at least for like the reports and the bring him in for not for an interview, but just bring him in more for a better look for him. Great size as well, 6'1", 190. And overall for the grades by game, great. No doubt about that. Coming from the SEC as well, so stiffer competition. Regardless of how you feel about how the SEC was this past year in terms of the shortcomings and disappointments for teams. But overall has a great stats all around. Pass rating was down from 77 to 54.5. Interceptions, he had all his interceptions out of the 3 years here, 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns he allowed on 32 receptions. Most of the time was outside the boundary, but can play a little bit on the box if need be. Next for the Kansas City Chiefs here, I have Josh Simmons. Again, pretty self-explanatory for this one. Offensive line is a huge need. You saw that in the divisional round with the Texans as well as the Super Bowl against the Eagles for that one. Patrick Mahomes could not do what he wanted, what he typically does with his, running around and making magic on his throws. So, disrupting the play. That was really the blueprint, really, for the Philadelphia Eagles, is just disrupting the quarterback, which is nothing outside the anything new or anything special they did there. It just kind of hammered that home. And that was really a big situation that they need to fix their offensive line, get rid of a few players as well in the offensive line too. So Josh Simmons with the replacement would be a good selection here. And next for your Super Bowl champions for the Philadelphia Eagles here, I have Luther Burden. I select him here because of, or at least receiver in general. If you buy into the argument of or the talks about A.J. Brown and his uncertainty with his future there, you can be a replacement. As well as if not, it's just another weapon for that juggernaut of the offense there. And you could say maybe that's a little too much, too many pieces, too much talent on that side of the ball there. Defense can certainly be a possibility here, but I just don't see anybody with the 32nd overall pick that's too worthy of that. Certainly edge rusher would be a spot here, but all the top edge rushers are gone. Interior defensive line could be a spot here. All of them are gone as well from the top end ones. So I look at Luther Burden, a great selection, a huge steal if he can pan out. There are character concerns about him as well as his commitment and so forth. So I think if they can fix that, that'd be a huge steal at the 32nd overall pick in the end of the first round there, and what he can offer you again. Also on top of that too as well, if you buy into the AJ Brown speculation, if he could potentially be gone there, you have the replacement for AJ Brown alongside Devontae Adams. So that's going to wrap it up for 2.0 there. I'm going to give you a quick rundown once again from 1 through 32 there. And let me know your thoughts down below if you like the selections here, if I was way off on some, if I was right on others, or where would you rank people, or where would you put other people in the draft there. So let me know your thoughts down below on that. I'll see you the day before the draft on Wednesday, April 23rd for my final mock draft 3.0 on the YouTube page.